Hello there, you're watching the press preview, our first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. Over the next half an hour, we're going to be talking about the headlines with the Evening Standard columnist Ayesha Hazarika and the co-owner of Westmonster.com, Michael Heaver. So welcome back to both of you.
Hello.
Hi. So let's take a look then at the front pages. And the Financial Times leads with our main story this evening, President Trump's decision to withdraw the US from the Iran nuclear deal. And President Trump there pictured holding up an agreement to reinstate sanctions. When I make promises, I keep them, a quotation from Donald Trump on the front of the Daily Telegraph. And the US President's description of the deal as rotten is the take from The Times. The Eye pictures the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, who called America's withdrawal unacceptable. The Metro's front page features a warning from Barack Obama, who said Mr. Trump's decision risks another war in the Middle East. The Guardian features a similar warning of a crisis for the wider Gulf region. Away from the Iran deal, the Lords take a wrecking ball to Brexit. That's the headline on the front of the Daily Express, after a number of defeats to the government this evening in the House of Lords. And the Daily Star leads with a story about Rio Ferdinand's baby, while the Sun reports on Sir Alex Ferguson's recovery after brain surgery. The Mirror has an exclusive interview with the mother of kidnapped schoolgirl Shannon Matthews. So let's talk about some of those stories with Ayesha Hazarika and Michael Heaver. And the main story really dominating the front pages is this decision by Donald Trump, announced just this evening, to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. You've picked out the Telegraph to kick off with, talking about this. And his quotation reflecting the fact that he's talked about this for some time, indeed on the campaign trail when running for president. When I make promises, I keep them, he said.
Yeah, Donald Trump very critical of this nuclear deal with Iran all the way through his campaign. And it follows the pattern, as we saw with North Korea, that when he's made his mind up on something, he isn't going to back down. He isn't going to follow, and of course the condemnation has followed from international leaders across the world, but he is going to make that strong decision and he's going to lay down a marker. And now we've seen, for instance, Kun Coughlin on the front page of the Telegraph wrote the piece, Why Tehran's Aggression Buried This Deal. Very interesting piece. I do recommend people read it because it shows you a pattern of behaviour from Iran that's become increasingly aggressive. They've been stockpiling weapons in Syria and in Lebanon. So there is a background to this, and of course, in Trump's mind, the deal has failed. And I would just say this to those that are condemning and rushing to judgment and saying this is the wrong thing to do. Just remember where we were with North Korea not that long ago. You know, everyone was saying that when he was talking about Little Rocket Man and Fire and Fury, that this is going to make the world a more dangerous place, and everyone condemned it. And look what's happened. Amazing scenes of Kim Jong-un and the South Korean president. And I think the same thing could happen here. People have just got to wait and let the Trump diplomacy play out.
What do you make of that argument, Ayesha? Do you think that Donald Trump is making that calculation? I've threatened sanctions, I've talked tough with North Korea, now I'm bringing Kim Jong-un to the table. I can have some effect using similar tactics with Iran. Do you think that's what he's thinking?
Well, he may well think that he is now, you know, sort of top dog in terms of geopolitics. But I think he's more motivated by his kind of rabid hatred of his predecessor, Barack Obama, and his absolute obsession to rip up anything that Obama did in terms of his legacy, whether it's Obamacare and affordable health care for poor Americans and this Iran deal. And he talked so much, I mean, Michael's right, he talked a lot about the Iran deal during his presidential campaign, like over, you know, that's about 3 years ago now. So that makes me sort of think that this is guided by that, because he wouldn't have known at that point, back in, you know, that point that this North Korea thing, you know, was going to pan out the way he did. But he had a bee in his bonnet about Iran right from back in the day. So I suspect he is motivated by this kind of, I've got to rip everything up that Obama does. But look, the consequences will be very, very far-ranging. We don't really know how this will pan out. Maybe Michael will be right. Maybe we will all have peace in our time and there will be kumbaya and Donald Trump will be welcomed through the streets of Tehran. I suspect not, but we never know. But the ramifications politically and economically are going to be massive. So there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen within Iran now, because there's an argument that some of the hardliners who are against the government, who are seen as being more moderate, that the government shouldn't have done this deal with the Americans. So there could be some quite interesting turbulence within Iranian politics as a result now. That could destabilise wider politics in the Middle East. And of course, there's a knock-on effect with oil as well. Iran produces quite a lot of oil. If the sanctions disrupt their oil production, we've already got a deficit of oil at the moment in the market, so that could mean the price of oil goes up as well.
So an awful lot at stake here, Michael. I mean, it's quite a risky move, is it not, given how delicate the situation is in the Middle East and given those other economic potential fallout?
Well, I think the big difference between someone like Donald Trump and Barack Obama is I think Trump is someone who isn't wanting to kick the can down the road. He is a businessman. He wants to see results. And I think what you've seen over years and years and years with North Korea and with Iran is sort of a malaise, and things have just steadily got more and more dangerous. And I think what you're seeing with President Trump is someone that takes on these big issues head on. And of course, if you make a decision to scrap something like this, of course you're going to get condemned. He knew he was going to get condemned. He didn't care because he thought it was the right thing to do.
We've moved on to the Times. Yeah. They, in their headline at the bottom, they say dismay amongst allies. It's condemned by the people he's supposed to be the closest to, condemned by Emmanuel Macron, who he was shaking hands for hours just a few weeks ago, by Theresa May, by Chancellor Merkel as well. He risks his relationships there as well, doesn't he, with this? But
I think, again, this guy's a leader. He isn't someone that follows. And if you remember, it was all the same people condemning his language towards North Korea. And what I would say, again, this is a businessman, a very successful businessman. He deals in black and white. He deals in results. What he doesn't deal in, he has no interest in being a politician who just kicks the can down the road, tries to sort of hash it together for as long as he can. He wants to... I mean, I think Donald Trump, what you're seeing right now, by the way, is you're seeing a president who is redefining the geopolitical landscape in years, more than many manage in decades. Whether you take North Korea, whether you take Iran, whether you take what he's doing domestically. And I think the fact that you've got a US president who promises, delivers and wins is going to be enormously popular in America.
Well, I think time will tell, really. I mean, let's take the North Korea deal. They haven't met yet. We don't know what the terms of trade are going to be. We don't know what North Korea is going to be prepared to give up. And when you go into a deal with somebody, both sides have to lose something. At the moment, North Korea is only gaining. Remember, North Korea has said it's not actually going to give up its nuclear weapons. It's just going to cease and desist. And how do we know what we're going to do if they won't let, for example, weapons inspectors in? So, and also with North Korea, we have been in this situation before where North Korea showed a bit of leg on denuclearisation, and it didn't happen. So, I mean, let's see what happens on all of this stuff. I think Trump is very good at making a big splash on the world stage. He likes getting the headlines. He's very good at it. I think quite a lot of it is also to distract from some of his troubles at home. He's got the Russian investigation. His own White House is an absolute mess. He's now got the Stormy Daniels stuff going on. Gun control and gun crime is a huge issue in America. And look, you know, let's see how this will play out. I mean, by the way, on the businessman thing, I mean, he's not been that successful a businessman. He's actually...
So he's a billionaire. I class a billionaire as successful.
But he's inherited, like, a lot of that. He's not a self-made
The thing is, people have doubted Trump at every turn. I remember when he was declared as a candidate, everyone said it was a joke. Then he won the Republican nomination. They said, he's never going to be US president. Now he is. Now it's turned into, well, let's wait and see the deal. Look, the scenes you saw of Kim Jong-un, the South Korean president, were historical. The scenes that you'll see with Trump, as I think he will meet with Kim Jong-un, are historical. These are things which will define our era. And I will argue that Trump is going to accomplish more and be remembered for far more than the likes of Barack Obama, who, when it comes to North Korea, did the square root of NAFL.
Let's the square root of NAFL. Let's move on to the front page of the Metro, shall we? This is our last take on this story. Trump dumps Iran nuclear deal is their very simple headline there. But what does this mean for the deal? Because the other signatories to it want to try to keep it on track. Iran has said for now that it will try to make it work, although it has also said that it could trigger the reproduction of uranium. So, is there a chance the deal can hold together in any way without the US being part of it?
Well, I think it would be quite hard for it to hold without the US being involved. And to be honest, why would Iran want to continue the deal when, you know, they haven't got that much to gain from continuing the deal? And the ramifications in the Middle East are going to be absolutely huge as well. Israel has rode in behind Trump. Benjamin Netanyahu has showered Trump with praise, very much agreeing with Michael that he's shown great leadership. I mean, Trump and Netanyahu have got a very, very close relationship. Trump also made a very controversial decision about Jerusalem recently in favour of the Israelis. So the whole stability of the politics in the region is going to be very affected by this. So we don't really know what's going to happen. Michael might be right, and this might be the most brilliant strategic move in the history of time, or it might undo at the stroke of a pen decades of sort of built-up diplomacy and brinkmanship and sort of negotiating to get the Middle East into this position. But time will tell.
Time will indeed, and we will report every twist and turn, of course. But let's move on to one other story that you wanted to talk about before the break, and that is the front page of The Sun. And just this weekend, we got the news that Sir Alex Ferguson had suffered a brain hemorrhage and had to undergo emergency surgery. We were told he was in intensive care, but The Sun goes with what they say is an exclusive concerning his health.
Yeah, basically, first words when Sir Alex came around was asking about how did Doncaster get on. His son Darren manages Doncaster Rovers, so just shows you, you know, football always on the brain, first priority. You know, obviously great that he's awake, but it just shows you that his commitment, his mind, just, you know, a man that had such accomplishments in the sport. You know, football on the brain always.
Well, that's right, and it was extraordinary over the weekend, actually, just seeing the goodwill and all the get well soon wishes coming from across the board. Footballers, whatever their colour, you know, whatever teams they played for, all coming together, and people in business as well. He was a real leader that's been admired.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a figure so big. He goes way beyond football. He's a cultural icon in this country, and so many leaders from the world of business, politics, sport, of course. He is really held up as the beacon of good and successful leadership. Everybody wants to be him. I remember when I worked for the Labour Party, he was actually quite a big Labour man. He was very, very fond of Gordon Brown, and they did some events together. And honestly, normally when you get celebrities turning up to these events, you know, people are interested. People were mobbing him, basically. Like, people were just absolutely beside themselves with excitement. And, you know, he's a hugely important figure to this country, not just to football, but, like, you know, across the piece, and we wish him well. But it's so brilliant that the first thing he said was, "How did Doncaster get on?"
Especially as his son had to miss that last home match, I think, hadn't he?
I mean,
to be at his father's bedside.
I mean, I'm a Chelsea fan, so I wasn't always his number one supporter. But he, you know, he's one of those people that's got respect of everyone.
Yeah,
that's the thing. You know, he's done everything in the game, been around donkey's years. And, you know, great that he's woken up. But, you know, just a great funny story that straight away it's back on the brain with footy.
And it just makes you think that's so in line with what he would have said, because he's so obsessed with it.
Absolutely. OK, on that note, we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. We've got lots to talk about coming up, including Wales has produced singers such as Tom Jones and Catherine Jenkins. So why is Wales no longer the country of song and music? Find out next. Welcome back. You're watching the Press Preview. With me tonight, the Evening Standard columnist Ayesha Hazarika and the co-owner of Westmonster.com, Michael Heaver. And we're turning inside the Times to kick off this section. This is page 2 of the Times. And mistakes made in handful of deportations is the headline there in that small article you've picked out. Yeah, so today there was a lot of windrush at the Home Affairs Select Committee. There were quite a few civil servants from the Home Office up in front of that committee, and Caroline Noakes, who is the Immigration Minister. So one of the civil servants said that a handful of people had been wrongly deported. But the truth is, nobody really knows at this stage. Caroline Noakes herself said, look, she really didn't know. And I think she was actually best to do that. It's better to say, I don't know, than do what Amber Rudd did, which was end up misleading Parliament because, you know, she didn't understand the targets. But the Windrush scandal is far from over. We've had other stories that have come out over the last 24 hours. A story that actually Home Office officials were warned in 2013 that, you know, older Caribbean Windrush generation people who were legitimately entitled to be in this country as British citizens were starting to get really menacing text messages and letters from the Home Office saying that they were going to be deported. And then we also learned that there's 1,000 highly skilled migrants, teachers, lawyers, doctors,
who, because of a small thing to do with their tax returns, they might have made some very, very small mistakes or inconsistencies in their tax returns, now face deportation. And there's a very tragic story of a former NHS worker who is now crippled with debt and basically sits in her front room fully dressed every night with a packed suitcase waiting for the authorities to come and deport her. And this scandal has got to be sorted out. Sajid Javid is the new Home Secretary. You know, I wish him well, first BAME Home Secretary, but he has got to get a grip on this.
Well, yes, and it's not necessarily all over the front pages, articles like this inside the Times, but it is still a big issue, isn't it, that needs to be resolved? Yeah,
I mean, look, the Home Office are basically saying that only a handful of people have been wrongly deported from Britain in the past 6 years, and then also saying that the review had basically failed to find any member of the Windrush generation who had been deported. So, you know, that's something. I hope that's correct, though at the moment, you know, it's hard to take that fully on board. You never know, other things may come up or whatever. And I think what's angered a lot of people about this is it's shown, I mean, you flagged some examples there, it's shown when the government want to, they can actually crack down, but they've done it on completely the wrong people. They've not done it on the 150,000 plus illegal migrants extra that are in this country each year. They've done it on Brits. They've cracked down on Brits, and I think that's a lot of the anger of people I've been speaking to, is it shows you the government, yet again, its focus is completely misguided, and I think that's why you've seen such a big reaction on this story. The Home Office need to get their house in order, and they need to deal with illegal migration, but this obviously isn't anything to do with that. But as I say, it shows you when they want to, they can get very tough. They've targeted completely the wrong people.
OK, I want to talk about Wales and music, but we also, I know there's a story on the front of the Express which we will touch on, and I know it's going to be very hard to do it briefly because I know you're very different, come at it from very different points of view, but the Express is going on the defeats in the Lords over Brexit today. Yeah,
the House of Lords have voted for a whole raft of amendments, and some today as well, on things like the Customs Union. Today they voted to, for instance, they want to take the date of Brexit out of the EU withdrawal bill completely, and from a Brexiteer point of view, you know, it's something that undermines Brexit and the public vote, but also, I would argue, undermines democracy because it sends out that message to voters when they've gone and cast their vote. You have unelected peers. I mean, there's 100 Lib Dems in there, for instance, around 100 Lib Dems, and they're basically deciding that they know best and they're going to disregard the public vote. So I think it's you know, in terms of Brexit, it's a disgrace, but I think it's actually bad for our democratic system.
I think it's democracy in action, and I think it's democracy working very well. We have a House of Lords which is there to scrutinise things that come from the House of Commons, and it can go back to the House of Commons, and that's what they're doing. So I absolutely applaud the House of Lords. Brexit's going to be the biggest decision this country takes since the Second World War. But there is not just trouble in the House of Lords, there's also going to be trouble in the House of Commons. We've got the Customs Union coming up. This single market stuff is going to be a problem. You've got Boris Johnson threatening possibly to resign, Liam Fox. It's an absolute mess.
You did that beautifully succinctly. Thank you very much indeed. So we've got about 20 seconds, luxury, to talk about this last story that you wanted to talk about. Welsh reputation as land of music falls flat, it says.
So we always think of Wales as being the land of song and music, and quite rightly, but a study's found that it's got the joint lowest proportion of adults in the UK that can play a musical instrument. It's joint with the North East as having the fewest number of adults that can play music, and it's such a shame because music is a brilliant thing, huge part of the Welsh cultural identity, and actually it shows you how important music in schools is.
Yeah, well, I'm absolutely, completely useless musically, so I have some sympathy. But look, it was a survey of 1,000 out of 1,000 young people, so I wonder if there's any fibbers in them. And does the triangle count? I mean, how reliable is this data? There needs to be an inquiry.
Maybe they're using their voice as an
karaoke, that should count.
Is clapping an instrument? I don't know.
On that note, we must leave it. Thankfully, no singing from either of you, but
I don't want that.
And Michael, thank you very much indeed.